You guys know that Fox News has a track record against anyone who isn't Christian. So recently they were talking about the Satanic Temple in New York City and how they're attempting to erect some sort of satanic monument in Oklahoma City. And they're doing so because Oklahoma City has a statue of the 10 Commandments on public land. So they're trying to make a point about how, well, if you're going to be inclusive of one religion, you should definitely consider other religions, because we're supposed to live in a society that doesn't have politicians endorsing one religion or another. Well, Fox was discussing this, and they had this one commentator on who said something pretty terrible. Take a look.
Well, you're making a moral equivalence between, say, Christianity, which promotes things good for the most part, and all other religions, and Satanism, which promotes evil.
Not a good role model.
And so they should be able to put the statue up, and then they should be shot right next to it, and then we take it down.
They should be shot right next to it. Okay, so he's inciting violence very clearly. He's being very specific about what should be done to these Satanists. And Cara, Fox News has refused to issue an apology for this. In fact, they did release a statement about it, and they're like, we're not going to entertain, you know, the ideas or the criticisms of these Satanists. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what they said. They just kind of blew them off. Why is it that there seems to be a double standard in the media where Fox News can say whatever the hell they want, but if MSNBC makes a benign joke about the Romney family, oh, well, Melissa Harris Perry needs to be fired?
I think that it's, first of all, it's because of the people that watch Fox News versus the people that watch MSNBC and CNN. So I think a lot of times what you see, like in the Melissa Harris Perry situation, is that their own viewers were upset by this, you know, so there was kind of a bipartisan support that she needs to issue an apology. The problem is with Fox News, you're only getting upset from the left, because the people watching Fox News on the right are saying hear, hear to what this man said. I also think the biggest issue here is that they didn't do their homework, as they often don't do. And this, I mean, yes, it's called the Satanist Temple, which sounds, I don't know, like ostensibly kind of offensive. But if you actually do your research and you read about what this Satanist Temple stands for, it's really a secular group. It's a group that doesn't really believe in God. And they are working to call themselves an organized religion so that they can stand up for the separation of church and state. They can stand up for First Amendment rights. And that's exactly what they're doing with this political move by saying, we want to put up a statue right next to the 10 Commandments. If you're going to violate the First Amendment, the only way to rectify that is to allow freedom of expression, allow other religions to do the same thing. But this group says overtly on their website that they're for benevolence, they're for human rights, they're for kind of empathy and the value of man. And the issue is that, the issue is that Fox News literally didn't do their homework. They're like, this is an anti-Christian group.
It's so ridiculous. And it's funny because, Alonso, Fox News seems to love touting the First Amendment and protecting the First Amendment, and especially the Second Amendment, when it's convenient for them,
absolutely,
right?
Yeah. It's sort of like I'm still waiting for Sarah Palin to come out in defense of the guy from the Minnesota Vikings for his freedom of speech. But no, this comes down to two strategies that the Republicans, the right wing in this country, love to play. One is never admit you're wrong and never apologize for anything. I always remember that George W. Bush interview where they asked what mistakes he had made along the way, and he couldn't think of one. And you never get an apology out of these people that isn't some sort of like, well, I'm sorry if you were offended, or I'm sorry if you didn't understand what I was saying. So there's that. The other thing is accuse your enemy of the thing that you're doing. So the people who yell and scream and have a fit about Sharia law is going to come, Sharia law, which is not anywhere close to ever happening, they're the ones who would love for this to be a super Christian theocracy in this country. And so when that gets, when you poke that at all, or you try and point out the hypocrisy, the ridiculousness of it, then yeah, then they go to let's shoot the Satanists. That's their fallback. I
mean, this is dangerous stuff to incite violence like that on a show that's viewed by many, many people, right? And I always think about Bill O'Reilly and how he kept saying George Tiller, the baby killer. And then George Tiller was shot dead, right? And I'm not saying there's a direct connection there, but inciting that type of violence on a program that's probably viewed by at least some people that have some issues is dangerous. It's so dangerous. So I feel like they should be held accountable for their actions.
Well, yes, they should be held accountable, I suppose. I don't know what that actually means. I mean, so what? He issues an apology and then he's on the next day anyway. They suspend him for a week. I don't know if that really accomplishes much.
He should be allowed back on the program.
Yeah, if Martin Bashir can lose his job at MSNBC for suggesting that somebody should poop in Sarah Palin's mouth, then I mean, come on.
So we want, but I don't know that that really does anything better. I don't think having everyone fired for what they think. No. But also, to go to your original question here, what's the difference? I mean, the difference in this specific case is that the offended party in the Fox News clip were Satanists. The offended party in the MSNBC clip were supposedly black children. Right. So that does explain a little bit of the disconnect in what the outcome was.
But
you know what I mean? No one's defending Satanists, but you might defend a black child. Should we be making some sort of moral equivalency here? Like, oh, well, racism is more intense than religious, bigotry. Like. Well, I think that's what they are doing, in the case of Satanists. You know what I mean? If it had been...
Yeah, of course, because it's very easy to...
Sure, but the whole point of the Bill of Rights is to, as we talked about earlier in the show, is to protect the weakest among us, the least popular, the sort of least embraced by society, because those are the ones who are easiest to turn our back on and say, oh, well, not you guys, the rest of us.
In terms of cleaning up this mess, I think you're right. Suspending this guy, getting him off the air does not solve the problem. Right. I think what would solve the problem is getting him on the air and saying, listen, this is what I believe. I'm against this move. Whatever your political ideology is, I made a mistake by inciting violence on the air. That's never going to be the solution to this problem, and I hope that you didn't take me at my word there. I disagree with them. I think we should take political action, but I was hot-headed, and I apologize for that because I think that would trickle down to the people watching who were starting to kind of rally around that cry. I think you've got to stare it in its face. You don't sweep it under the rug.
Right, and actually that's what
these guys don't do ever.
Right, and that's what Melissa Harris Perry was doing. I don't think she had to apologize. I really don't.
Absolutely not.
However, I think in her mind or in the MSNBC's executive minds, what they were saying is you frame a lot of things through a racial lens. That's what she does on her show often. So if you don't apologize for this segment that ended up supposedly mocking this black child, that then you're being a hypocrite. So I think she felt she had to do it. Versus no one at Fox is going to say I feel hypocritical because I made a joke about Satanists. It just doesn't add up.
Let me just jump in with a little commentary on that double standard. I would like to call for progressives and liberals to stop being so sensitive, right? So I want them to stop being overly critical of jokes. Like, for instance, Dean Obeidallah going on Melissa Harris Perry's show and saying, oh, that Mitt Romney photo is symbolic because it represents the Republican Party. A, that was a joke, but B, it was also very accurate, right? So for liberals to say, no, you gotta apologize for that, that's so offensive. No, stop being so damn weak. Stop being so apologetic when you don't need to be apologetic. We need to take a little bit of advice from the Republican Party because, of course, they're not apologetic about anything, but you gotta be able to differentiate between something that actually is offensive and something that is not offensive. And so I want us to be a little stronger.
Yeah,
that's my commentary.
Every half-assed comedian and non-comedian on Twitter during a Republican convention, everyone makes that joke. Oh, there's the one black guy.
Right.
So it's not, he wasn't offending the kid. He didn't say anything about the kid.
Yeah. And speaking of comedians, I think that you're right. Progressives need to toughen up. They need to take a page from, I'm forgetting her name, the comedian who made the joke about Pearl Harbor veterans and SpaghettiOs over New Year's.
Right.
And she said, you know what? I don't apologize. They survived World War II. They can handle one comedian telling a joke about SpaghettiOs, and I in no way am impugning their service to this country. And it's like, yes, that's how you respond to this stuff, because everybody, the second they disagree with you, it's like, oh my God, I'm offended. And as Stephen Fry recently put it, well, so the fuck what?
That's true. That's true. And I think I would actually be really interested to see what somebody like Bill O'Reilly's response is to this, because he, I think more than anything else, I disagree with literally 99.9% of what he says, but he's always been a champion of free speech, and I've even seen him stick his neck out for people on the left when they're in hot water because of free speech issues. And so I'd be interested to see what he says with this specific situation, because yes, I will defend your First Amendment right to disagree with whomever you disagree with and say things out loud and proud on the air about them. But there are always limits even to free speech. You cannot yell fire in a crowded movie theater. And I think that saying we should kill a certain group of people, that would be hilarious, is not a joke. It's kind of a directive. And I think that we've got to be cautious about that.
It's also just weak. It's just weak. Come up with something a little more clever. Can I just take a moment to give us as online people some props? Because we aren't stuck in this world where everything has to be apologized for constantly, and that's why we can speak freely and don't have people barking things in our ears and all that.
I feel like we say offensive things 99% of the time. And it's not offensive because we're trying to be provocative or anything like that. It's because that's what we genuinely feel, that's what we think, that's how we analyze the news, and we can be honest with our audience without worrying about people censoring us. So that's definitely a good feeling.